welcome to the Culture Ward, where we dissect and dismember pop culture in all its forms. Before we begin, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and help us grow the channel. It really means a lot to us. And don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoy the content. Now let's get into it. Whenever we talk about Marvel Comics, we often discuss the era beginning in around 1961, when it was officially branded with the Marvel moniker, and was led by the creative team of Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko. But the company actually began in 1939 under the name Timely Publications, which was later known as Atlas Comics. Founded by pulp magazine publisher Martin Goodman, the very first publication was a comic book titled Marvel Comics No. 1, which introduced the character the Human Torch, as well as Namor the Submariner. And it was an immediate success, selling nearly 1 million copies. While the content of the earliest publications were actually outsourced from another company, Funnies Inc., within a year or so, Timely had its own staff, including writer Joe Simon and artist Jack Kirby. In March of 1941, Simon and Kirby created the character of Captain America, introduced in his own comic titled Captain America Comics No. 1, another resounding success. Over the next 2 decades, Goodman's business strategy included using multiple shell companies to publish its various magazines and comics. One such shell company was named Marvel Comics as early as 1944, with Marvel Mystery Comics No. 55. Additionally, some comic covers were labeled a Marvel magazine by 1947, such as All Surprise Comics No. 12. And they began using the name Marvel Comic Group on some comics in 1948. In the early 1960s, the company was officially rebranded as Marvel Comics with the publication of the science fiction anthology Journey into Mystery No. 69 and the teen humor comic Patsy Walker No. 95. Not long after, writer and longtime editor Stan Lee, who had been hired as a 16-year-old office assistant in 1939 and made interim editor in 1941 under his birth name, Stanley Lieber, helped to usher in what would become known as the Marvel Age of Comics. By the late 1950s, DC Comics had managed to revive the popularity of superheroes, and Marvel sought to follow suit. More specifically, Martin Goodman, who was a trend follower, noticed the success of DC's Justice League of America comics, featuring a team of superheroes, and thus directed Stan Lee to create a comic featuring a team-up as well. With his directive from Goodman, Stan Lee got to work creating a comic about a group of superheroes. However, in contrast to what they had always done, and what other comic publishers continue to do, Stan Lee wanted to write more serious content with more characterization, real-world elements, and aimed more at adult readers.
And he said to me, "Stan, why don't you do a book about a group of superheroes?" So I figured this is my chance to do it my way. I came up with something I called the Fantastic Four.
Thus, when he created the Fantastic Four, he specifically designed them to be more relatable characters. First and foremost, in the first few issues, he didn't even give them costumes. He just had them dress in normal street clothes. Additionally, he didn't follow the industry norms and character archetypes. He made the leader a flawed human who talked too much and always bored his friends. He made one of the team a moody teenager that didn't want to be a hero, but wanted to goof off and do teenager things. And he made a woman who wasn't a damsel in distress, but a co-equal member of the group with superpowers of her own that rivaled any on the team. And of course, he made one of them a monster.
I didn't give them costumes, and I tried to make them real characters living in the real world.
Of course, we're talking about the Fantastic Four. The first issue premiered in November 1961 and launched a whole new era, now known as the Marvel Age of Comics, with stories that were more grounded and relatable, with characters that had real-world problems and interpersonal drama, something that had long been absent from comics. In the first few issues, we meet our team, Reed Richards, also known as Mr. Fantastic, who has the ability to stretch his body, Susan, or Sue Storm, Reed's fiancée, also known as the Invisible Woman, who has the ability to become invisible and create force fields, Johnny Storm, Sue's younger brother, also known as the Human Torch, who has the ability to turn into a fireball,
Flame on!
What is this? A fire...
and Ben Grimm, also known as the Thing, who was transformed into an immensely powerful monster made of stone.
You know what time it is? It's clobbering time!
Interesting side note, the Human Torch was a retread of one of the first characters that appeared in Marvel Comics No. 1, published under the Timely Comics label in 1939. However, that incarnation of the character was an android, while the Fantastic Four Human Torch was a human with superpowers. The comic was a success and essentially catapulted Marvel Comics to the top of the industry, introducing a new era in comics. In addition to the new tone of Marvel Comics, Stan Lee was also partially responsible for creating a new method for comic development, something that would come to be called the Marvel Method. In essence, instead of a writer drafting a complete script and presenting it to the artist to storyboard, Stan Lee would write a basic outline, then give it to Jack Kirby to draw, and then Lee would go back and fill in the panels with story and dialogue. It made the Marvel Comics much more art-driven and helped create some of the most memorable comics and story arcs of all time. Anyway, the Fantastic Four reintroduced another Golden Age character, the anti-hero Namor the Submariner in issue number 4, and Doctor Doom in issue number 5. And for the next 30 or so issues, the comics focused mostly on world building, with quite a bit of Stan Lee's distinctive melodrama, with stories about romance, interpersonal drama, and day-to-day life. It was this deep, humanizing characterization that gave Marvel Comics weight and made them memorable stories as opposed to disposable entertainment. In the mid-1960s, the Fantastic Four began expanding its universe with characters like the Inhumans and alternate dimensions such as the Negative Zone. But it was in 1966, with issues number 48 to 50, that the universe got a whole lot heavier with the introduction of the world-devouring cosmic entity known as Galactus. The Galactus trilogy begins with the arrival of his herald, the Silver Surfer, aka Norrin Radd, who comes to Earth to signal its doom. The Fantastic Four confronts the Silver Surfer, learning of Galactus' plans, and through an alliance with another cosmic entity known as the Watcher, seeks to thwart him. However, it's clear that Galactus is far too powerful and is sure to defeat them. Silver Surfer, moved by the spirit and compassion of humanity, rebels against his master, helping the Fantastic Four acquire a cosmic device known as the Ultimate Nullifier, which has the capacity to destroy Galactus. They then bargain with Galactus to spare the Earth. Silver Surfer, though, is banished to Earth due to his disloyalty. The Galactus and Silver Surfer storyline opened the Marvel Universe up to cosmic threats and adventures, forever expanding the scope and depth of comic storytelling going forward. It also established the Silver Surfer as a formidable hero in his own right, and he has become as famous and well regarded in comic lore as the Fantastic Four themselves. In the 1970s, there were changes behind the scenes, first with Jack Kirby's departure in 1970, and with the introduction of additional writers such as Roy Thomas, Jerry Conway, and Marv Wolfman, along with artists such as John Romita, John Buscemi, and Rich Buckler. The decade began with Lee and Kirby's cosmic storylines wrapping up and refocusing on team dynamics and personal struggles, including marital tensions and a temporary separation between Reed and Sue. The decade later introduced new cosmic threats, including Annihilus and the High Evolutionary. And the decade ended with the team battling Skrulls. All in all, the 1970s balanced cosmic threats with more down-to-earth stories and family dynamics. The 1980s saw the iconic run of writer John Byrne, who began with the story Back to Basics in issue number 232, re-establishing the team as Marvel's first family, focusing on their team and family dynamics. Byrne enhanced Sue's character, making her more assertive, and he introduced the character of She-Hulk as a replacement for the Thing, following the Secret Wars story arc that had Ben Grimm relocated to Battleworld. The 1980s also saw darker themes evolve, such as battling demonic entities, including the fan favorite Mephisto. The decade as a whole saw high-stakes battles with emotional depth, with John Byrne's 5-year run in particular having a lasting impact on the series. Since the 1980s, the Fantastic Four has had its ups and downs. While there was the Infinity War saga in the early 1990s, there were less well-received stories in the mid-90s, leading to a reboot of the team in an alternate universe in the Heroes Reborn storyline under Jim Lee. The 2000s likewise fluctuated between cosmic threats and family dynamics and introduced the Unthinkable arc, where Doctor Doom wielded magic. Jonathan Hickman took the helm in the early 2010s, elevating the cosmic scope, introducing the Future Foundation and Reed's Multiversal Council of Reeds. And the team was dissolved in the Secret Wars series in 2015. Whereafter, there was a multi-year hiatus until 2018 when Dan Slott revived the series, restoring classic dynamics. Since 2022, Ryan North has been steering the ship, with the team frequently facing multiversal incursions and new villains. While the Fantastic Four has had a pretty uneven run for the past several years, as Marvel Comics as a whole have had, they remain Marvel's foundational brand, the first family of Marvel and the blueprint for modern comic storytelling, blending relatable human melodrama with bizarre and fantastical adventures, as well as high-stakes cosmic threats. They are a cornerstone of the entire comic industry. The Fantastic Four has been immensely popular since its inception in 1961. In 1967, it was picked up as an animated series produced by Hanna-Barbera, which ran for 20 episodes through September of 1968.
The Fantastic Four, united in their fight against interplanetary evil. Fantastic!
A second animated series was produced by DePatie Freleng in 1978, running for an additional 13 episodes. This series is famous for replacing the Human Torch with the robot Herbie, because apparently the Human Torch character had been optioned for a movie that never happened, and therefore wasn't available to use in the series. Jack Kirby was actually hired to provide art for the series, and he is responsible for designing Herbie, the last thing he ever did for Marvel. The character was soon after integrated into the comics in Fantastic Four number 209. A third Fantastic Four series was broadcast as part of the Marvel Action Hour between 1994 and 1996, producing a total of 26 episodes.
I gotta lay off Aunt Petunia's pink lemonade.
And finally, Fantastic Four: World's Greatest Heroes ran for another 26-episode run beginning in 2006 on the Cartoon Network. Over the years, members of the Fantastic Four made appearances in other animated shows, such as The Thing being featured in the first half of the 1979 Saturday morning cartoon Fred and Barney Meet the Thing, although Fred and Barney didn't make an appearance in the Thing's portion of the show, despite the title. Various individual members appeared briefly, usually with little or no dialogue, in the Avengers: The Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and they make several appearances in Superhero Squad Show.
Mr. Fantastic! Mr. Fantastic! Over here! Couldst thou explain to, the Hulk what is happening?
Interestingly, there was also a short-lived radio show called The Fantastic Four that adapted early Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stories, usually almost verbatim from the comics that they were drawn from. It notably starred a young Bill Murray as Johnny Storm, and they were narrated by Stan Lee himself. As best as I can tell, it looks like about 13 short episodes were made, each about 20 minutes long, but I can't tell where or what radio station it was aired on or what studio produced it. I'm sure the information exists somewhere, but I can't find it.
Let's observe another scene at Swanson's garage.
Oh, we got her purring like a lamb, Johnny boy.
Good, that's the way it should be. There's only one thing I like better than working on cars.
What's that? Hey, look. What's that in the sky?
That's my cue. Flame on.
Hey, Johnny, what's happening to you?
Remember me saying there's only one thing I like better than working on cars? Well, this is it.
The figure we...
Anyway, you can still listen to the segments. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. The Fantastic Four has also been adapted into a few feature films as well. The first time, Constantin Films, a German company who held the film rights, hired Roger Corman to produce a film titled The Fantastic Four in 1994, solely to allow Constantin to maintain its film rights. As such, the movie was likely never intended to be released publicly, although bootleg versions have been available for a while. Campy and low budget, it has since amassed a sort of cult reverence, with one critic noting that while, quote, it's terribly low budget and derisively campy and feebly performed, there's also something inquiringly irresistible about this B-comic tale that makes you wonder why it didn't get a release somewhere along the line. Eventually, 20th Century Fox acquired the film rights and in 2005 released Fantastic Four, directed by Tim Story. Starring Ion Gruffudd, I don't know how to say his name, it's a Welsh name so nobody knows how to say that, as Reed Richards, Jessica Alba as Sue Storm, Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm, and a young, pre-Captain America Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. The film begins with an origin story, showing the group being exposed to cosmic rays on a space mission which gives them all their classic powers. It also has Victor Von Doom aboard the same mission getting his own powers so that he becomes Dr. Doom, turning into an evil nemesis hell-bent on destroying the Fantastic Four and seizing power. Despite mixed reviews due to what critics thought was a simplistic plot, the movie actually performed quite well. A sequel was released in 2007 called Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, this time dealing with the Galactus storyline from the comics. While Reed and Sue are preparing for their wedding, the Silver Surfer appears and heralds the approach of the Planet Devourer. At one point, Johnny Storm, Human Torch, tries to stop the Surfer, but contact with his board causes Johnny to swap powers with his team whenever he touches him, causing some team tension. Loosely following the comic story, the Silver Surfer is convinced to betray Galactus, thus saving Earth. Once again, despite mixed and negative reviews, the film was a moderate box office success. It did have a rushed feel to it, and while the Silver Surfer was, I thought, well done, Galactus' portrayal was severely underwhelming. I actually enjoyed the Tim Story movies, despite negative reviews, and thought the casting was just about perfect. In 2015, there was an effort to reboot the Fantastic Four with a new film, once again by Fox, stylized as Fan Four Stick. Directed by Josh Trank, starring Miles Teller as Reed, Katamara as Sue, Jamie Bell as Ben, and Michael B. Jordan as the race-swapped Johnny Storm, changing the comic backstory to reflect that Johnny was the biological son of their father Franklin Storm, while Sue was his adopted sister. It's as stupid as it sounds, and it's just one of the things that made this movie totally shit. Like, worse than the unreleased Corman film. In this movie, Reed builds a teleportation device that sends the team to an alternate dimension where they receive their powers, once again including Victor Von Doom. Von Doom then threatens to destroy Earth with a dimensional rift, and the team has to come together to stop him. It was a total and massive failure, being panned by critics and audiences alike, currently holding a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 3.7 out of 10, as well as a 27 out of 100 on Metacritic. It also lost the studio money, and to this day, Fantastic Four, or Fant Four Stick, still has the lowest rating out of all theatrical films based on Marvel Comics. Moreover, the CinemaScore audience score of C- is the, quote, worst grade than anyone can remember for a marquee superhero title made by a major Hollywood studio. And remember, both the MCU and the DCEU have been shitting out absolute garbage for the past half-decade at this point, so being the worst superhero movie is an absolute achievement. But that brings us up to date. With the latest incarnation of the Fantastic Four set to release this weekend, which will be the Disney Marvel movie Fantastic Four First Steps, a complete reboot of the franchise within the framework of the MCU. In 2019, Disney acquired 20th Century Fox Studios in an enormous $70+ billion deal with Fox, which included the film rights to the X-Men, Deadpool, and the Fantastic Four. Almost immediately thereafter, Kevin Feige announced that a new Fantastic Four movie was in development. Originally scheduled to begin production in 2023, but due in part to the moronic Hollywood strikes, it was delayed until mid-2024. The new film was directed by Matt Shakman, the director behind WandaVision, for better or worse, and stars Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Eben Moss-Backrack as Ben Grimm. Set in a retro-futuristic 1960s-inspired alternate universe, the film skips the origin story, beginning with the team as an established group of heroes who are faced with the arrival of the Silver Surfer, this time portrayed as the female variant of the character named Shala Bal, who heralds Earth's impending doom at the hands of Galactus. Apparently, Galactus agrees to spare the Earth if Reed and Sue will surrender their unborn child to him. But they refuse his demands and spend the rest of the movie trying to figure out how to defeat the undefeatable cosmic threat. I haven't seen the movie yet, but early reviews, even from some of the most cynical voices in the YouTuberverse, are pretty positive. They at least agree that it's the best Marvel production in 2025, which I know is a shockingly low bar. But pretty much everyone agrees that the setting and aesthetic are great, and the performances of the cast are mostly praised. Some still think Pedro Pascal is miscast, but he does an okay job of it anyway, while the performances of Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss-Backrack are praised. Folks have also complimented the relatively tight script, the disconnect from the larger MCU's convoluted storyline, and the toned-down Marvel humor. And the form of Galactus is supposedly a sight to behold, with his voice actor Ralph Ineson delivering a compelling performance. One of the biggest gripes so far is the inclusion of Shala Bal as the Silver Surfer. While the character is played competently by Julia Gardner, it was such a wasted opportunity and stupid decision to have one of the most well-known Marvel characters, Norrin Radd's Silver Surfer, who appeared thousands of times in the comics, including his own continuing series, being gender swapped with a character that appeared in a handful of panels in a handful of comics set in an alternate universe. There really was no good narrative reason for this decision, and almost certainly is a relic of the MCU to push identity politics. That being said, it really doesn't affect the story one way or the other. It's just a gentle little FU to fans. Anyway, the Fantastic Four First Steps released on July 25th, 2025 in theaters. I plan to see it next week, unexpectedly optimistic as a result of the aforementioned reviews. I can't say I'm excited to see Pedro Pascal again. I, like many others, suffer from Pedro fatigue, and he just kind of creeps me out. But I'm willing to tolerate him just to see Galactus in IMAX. And I really hope I like it. I've been a Fantastic Four fan since my childhood. I even have a pretty good chunk of the John Byrne run of the comics. I guess I'll find out soon enough. What about you? Have you seen Fantastic Four First Steps yet? What did you think? Join the conversation in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Bye for now. We hope to see you next time in the Culture Ward.